All right, hello. Here's the walkthrough of the In Your Blood Tyto quests that I should have assigned to you. So to go over that, the first quest that it takes us on in the storyline is we have to talk to Arthur. So Arthur's complaining about his joints are hurting when he does physical exercise, his knees especially. The joints is where this thing we find out affects. So his joints are hurting. So we're trying to figure out what the problem is there. And we look at his blood, first of all. So we look at the blood and we see what normal blood looks like. And then, so normal red blood cells, white blood cells. It's all covered by my face over here. We can see what all the different types of blood look like, things that are in blood look like. We compare it with Arthur's blood sample, and we see that these red blood cells are out of the ordinary. We then look at some blood disorders that we know about and compare and contrast. So here, leukemia. No, it doesn't look like leukemia. It ends up looking like, and there's a couple others we look at before we figure out that actually it looks similar to sickle cell anemia. We think Arthur has sickle cell anemia. So we tell him that, so we have to convince him. And this is what happens in sickle cell anemia is the blood, since it's not round, it's that sickle shape, it gets clotted up in some places. So in the blood sample here, we can see how it gets clotted up in these areas, these capillaries where it branches off. So we have to convince him. We think you have sickle cell anemia. So one of the first arguments is, well, white blood cells help the body fight infection and disease, and red blood cells carry oxygen throughout the body, and platelets are small disc-shaped cell fragments that are involved in the clotting. So that's all the information about blood. That's what we've learned. And then as for Arthur's, his sickle cell anemia causes red blood cells to be pointy and malformed. And Arthur has some of these sickled cells in his blood sample. And that goes into the fill in the blanks, which I filled out. So we have to claim that Arthur has sickle cell anemia. We have to tell him that the white blood cells help the body fight infection and disease. Red blood cells carry oxygen throughout the body. And platelets are the disc-shaped fragments involved in clotting. Sickle cell anemia causes red blood cells to be pointy and malformed, and he has some sickled cells in his blood sample. Next, we read a couple articles. Hey, where'd you get those genes? Found a couple things out about mutations. Sickle cell anemia is a type of mutation. If he doesn't have it at birth, you never will, because it's genetic. In this article, what is sickle cell anemia? No, I don't have a question for this one. Sickle cell anemia causes red blood cells to become pointy, rigid, sickle-shaped. Normal red blood cells are round and flexible and have a small indent in the center. Sickle cell patients experience pain and fatigue, which is some of the symptoms Arthur is feeling. So we go to speak to Alice. And Alice, let's see, talks about the family tree. She has sickle cell anemia, so Alice tells us about it. She has, in her family, we can see in this pedigree here, 2 sickle cell alleles. So the sickle cell alleles are the little S's. It looks like S is sickle cell, A is normal. So it looks like this Aunt Zora had it, and it made her a carrier, right? That's her right there. You can see how it's passed on in their family. There's a Punnett square you have to figure out. Here's the Punnett square done. So you have to figure out that the likelihood 2 sickle cell alleles are in your parents. There is, I believe, a 2 in 4 chance. 2 in 4 chance that they have 1 sickle allele or no sickle alleles. You can never get both alleles sickle in these combinations here. So that's 0 out of 4. Yep, there's the answers right there. Good, good. So then we go to the next storyline, one bloody thing after another. So where does the sickle cell come from in the first place? Let's see. Here's some more mutate. Oh, so this is question number 3 in the article Inheriting Sickle Cell Anemia. Person with one sickle cell is called, here it is right here, they're called a carrier. Carrier, they carry that gene even though they don't fully have the disease, they are carriers for it. Carrier, they're called a carrier. What is a mutation anyway? This is question number 4. Studying in typo copying DNA is called a typo in copying DNA is called a mutation. Mutation. Let's see. Next, we looked at some protein structures and compared and contrasted sickle and normal hemoglobin. They're made of different proteins is the problem. Your body made different proteins because of that mutation. So here's your argument with Arthur about sickle cell anemia. Why do mutations occur? Mutations occur randomly. It's just random. And they occur when offspring DNA are incorrectly copies part of the parent DNA. So it's an incorrect copy. It's a typo, basically. Why do mutations occur? Mutations occur, oh, there's the answer I just said. Randomly incorrect copies of parental DNA. Second argument, mutations can be inherited from parents, making them traits. An organism with a beneficial mutation is more likely to survive and reproduce. That actually goes into how we evolved, accumulating beneficial traits. So they're more likely to inherit from parents, you're more likely to survive and reproduce. Argument 5C, if a person inherits 2 sickle cell alleles, they have the disease when they're born. They inherited 1 sickle allele, they're a carrier, and carriers don't have sickle cell symptoms, but they can still pass that allele on to their children. Here we go, 2 sickle alleles, 1 sickle allele, they're called the carrier, and the carriers do not have the symptoms, but they can pass that allele on to their children. So here's where we talk about carrier. So Arthur must be a carrier. He doesn't have both alleles, both genes. He has one of them. So he's a carrier and shows some of the symptoms. So now we got to look at the hemoglobin again. All right. Let's look at it for AA, AS, and SS genotypes. Maybe we'll find something interesting. So we look at them. Normal hemoglobin proteins are close but not touching. It's flexible. Good, good. That's what it looks like. The sickled, this makes this pointy, rigid sickle cell. It's bad. And if you're a carrier, it's normal, but that's not all I have in my blood. When it's under stress, it seems to show some of the sickle under normal conditions, normal cell. Under stress, it can sometimes, some of the cells turn sickle. Even though some are normal, some of them can show that sickle characteristic. So here is argument number 6, question number 6 in my worksheet. A normal hemoglobin protein does not interlock with others. Therefore, it creates flexible normal red blood cells. Question right here. Protein does not normal red blood cells. All right, that's good. Sickled cell causes hemoglobin proteins to interlock in long strands, so they're rigid and pointy. Rigid and pointy. Therefore, sickle cells are rigid and pointy under stress. Some of Arthur's red blood cells become sickled after track practice because of the structure. Normal conditions, AS, that's the carrier hemoglobin, the same as AA. However, stressful conditions like heavy exercise can cause AS carriers, red blood cells to become sickled. The sickled carrier may still have mild or occasional sickle cell symptoms. I didn't include that question. You just have to do that one on the game only. And so we see, again, the same Punnett square from earlier. How likely was it? Well, it looks like he had a 2 in 4 chance of getting no sickle cell or 2 in 4 chance of being a carrier. That's the probability analysis right there. He had a 50-50 chance. Next, parasite sites. Why has sickle cell anemia persisted for so long if it has such negative impacts? That's a question. Why do we evolve with that? If it's negative, usually negative stuff doesn't get passed on, that people don't do well in it. If they have a negative trait and they usually don't have kids or possibly die off if it's really bad. So why is it so common? Well, here's a world map. This world map compares where malaria is most present. Malaria is a disease passed on by mosquitoes that can be a pretty deadly disease. So what's the correlation here? So it sees there's an overlap between where sickle cell and malaria is. So where people have malaria, lots of people with sickle cell live in those same areas. We don't have malaria where we live because mosquitoes die in the wintertime. So it's mostly in warm places. I maybe even have mentioned that's why the CDC is in Atlanta, Georgia, not in Washington, because it's down south. The biggest city in the south is where they made the CDC back when malaria was prevalent years and years and years ago. So it looks like there's a correlation between sickle cell anemia and malaria. What is that correlation? So let's look at mosquitoes infecting a non-sickle person and a carrier. So let's look at that. Well, non-sickle parasite gets in the bloodstream, destroys the blood cells, colonizes more. Not good for that person. They're probably going to die. Review what happens when it bites a carrier, AS patient, a person who has a sickle cell allele. They're a carrier. They don't have it, but they're a carrier. Well, in this, the body realizes something's wrong with the sickled red blood cells and sends things to clean them up in a hurry. And the malaria parasite can't complete its life cycle. So people with sickle cell carriers, they actually can fight off malaria. So this is question number 7. So though the SS hemoglobin has negative effects, AS hemoglobin can provide resistance to malaria. So here's the claim. Malaria is caused by a parasite that infects and destroys healthy red blood cells. And sickle cell is most common in or near areas where malaria is present. So again, we've got parasite, malaria is prevalent. And the next claim is, when the malaria parasite infects an AS red blood cell, it triggers sickling in the cell. Because AS red blood cells look and behave normally, they can become sickled if the person is under stress. Macrophages target the sickle cells with AS hemoglobin, showing the malaria parasites spread, slowing the spread. So they can't spread, kills them off. So for this one, you had to write the genotype, AS, red blood cells. It triggers sickling in the cell because AS, that's what you have to write earlier here, look and behave normally, but can become sickled if the person's under stress. And those macrophages, things that eat the viruses, target the sickled cells with the AS hemoglobin, and they slow the parasite spread. Yay, good job. Thanks for helping, Arthur says. The last storyline is best offense increased resistance. And let's see, they're talking about tuberculosis for this one. I let you guys continue with that if you want to continue with quest 6 of this storyline. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to. I will talk about cystic fibrosis eventually in class, though. It's something that affects your lungs. But that's it as far as this worksheet is concerned. And hopefully I helped you out. Bye.